I'm a low-grade omega, but my pheromones are a near-perfect match for a New York City tycoon. He kept me by his side for 8 years and helped me heal my damaged gland, but then threw me out like trash because of something his fiancée said. He pressed on my gland and warned me, get rid of those pathetic ideas. But after I faked my own death, he turned NYC upside down looking for me. Finally, he cornered me in the stairwell of my apartment building as I tried to run. A 98% match. You really think you can get away? I ran back to the villa, drenched from the rain, and walked in on Julian with his arms around his fiancée, getting intimate. He held her by the waist and led her upstairs. Just before they went into the room, his eyes flickered down toward the landing, almost as if by accident. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, looking up past the blinding glare of the chandelier, and my eyes met his. He froze for a second and stiffly looked away. I was too far to see anything but the outline of his movements. Staring up for so long made the bright light sting my eyes and bring tears. I looked down, turned up the setting on my collar to lock down my pheromones, and headed upstairs. I stopped right in front of his bedroom door. The hallway was silent, which only made the soft sounds of kissing and breathing from inside the room seem deafening. I stood at the door, my ears burning as I listened, and I couldn't help but touch the gland hidden under my collar. A voice in my head was screaming, forcing my hand up against my will. Just as my fingers were about to touch the doorknob, Julian's commanding voice suddenly came from behind me, laced with a hook that made my heart itch. Heard enough? Or do you need me to help you hear it more clearly? I froze, confused. Why was Julian behind me? Wasn't he supposed to be in the room? Flustered, I dropped my gaze and stammered out a denial. I was just getting something I left behind. He didn't call out my clumsy lie, just asked calmly, what did you leave? I made something up. I borrowed your bathroom to shower last time and left a shirt here. He nodded. Go back to your room. I'll have a maid bring it to you later if I find it. I clenched my fists nervously, licked my dry lips, and obediently nodded, turning to leave. But then I heard the sound of his bedroom door opening behind me. I looked back at the sound and saw a man with a face strikingly similar to Julian S., and next to him, a woman with a flirtatious smile. I stared, mesmerized by the face that looked so much like Julian S., until his fiancée let out a soft laugh. Julian, honey, is this that low-grade omega? I didn't like how she described me, but she was right. I'm a low-grade omega, but my pheromone match with the New York tycoon Julian Price is 98%. He kept me for 8 years, helping me repair my damaged gland, but he also kept me tied to his side, preventing his enemies from using me as a weapon against him. Julian's expression was cold, as if he couldn't care less. Yeah, that S him. Leo. And you too, if you're done with your little show, get out. I pressed my lips together, suppressing the bitter ache swelling in my chest, and scrambled to get away. But Julian suddenly grabbed my wrist. Couldn't help but look back. He gestured toward the room with his chin. Go on, find your thing. I held my breath, trying to absorb every sensation of his touch, but he didn't give me the chance. His hand loosened abruptly. Do you need me to take you in? I blinked with difficulty and took a step inside. But the truth was, what I was looking for was never in there. Julian stood behind me. Still haven't found it? His strong alpha pheromones were making my head spin, and I felt myself dizzily stumbling toward him. But then, thud. I landed hard on the floor, my knees scraped red and aching. I pushed myself up, humiliated. Julian had his hands in his trench coat pockets, looking down at me. How many lies have you told recently? He suddenly bent down, grabbing my chin. His fingertips slid down to my Adam's apple, pressing lightly but skillfully. You like sleeping in my bed that much? You like eavesdropping on me that much? A pained expression crossed my face. I grabbed his sleeve and begged. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Julian, Julian coldly covered my mouth, forcing me to swallow my words. He didn't pull back until my tears spilled over, splashing onto the back of his hand. Only then did he pull that hand away. With the other, he roughly wiped away my tears. Go back to your room and think about what you've done. Don't show your face to me until you've figured it out. I nodded frantically, wiping my tears as I got up and ran out, my mind replaying what happened last time. That was the first time he brought his fiancée home. I saw them but deliberately hid, running off to a bar to get drunk. I came back reeking of alcohol, pretended to be wasted, and collapsed onto his bed, calling his name and saying I felt sick. In my supposed confusion, I started spouting other nonsense. He stood by the bed in a perfectly tailored suit, gently brushing the damp hair from my forehead with a soft sigh. I craved that tenderness, so I kept pretending to be asleep. The next morning, however, I stood at the door and watched him order his staff to remove the bed I had slept in from the room. He was always so cold and heartless, especially to me. Was it just because I was a low-grade omega who happened to be a 98% match for him? I couldn't figure it out. I just choked back my tears and asked someone to dig up information on Julian and his fiancée. They had an informal engagement, arranged simply because the head of the Vance family got carried away while drinking and promised Ms. Vance to Julian. Julian hadn't refused, he silently accepted. After repeatedly hitting a wall with him, Ms. Vance found a lookalike to provoke Julian and put on a show in front of him. Even though Julian didn't like Ms. Vance, I knew for a fact that he was straight. And I'd been in love with a straight man for 7 years. A few days later, after I'd finally sorted out my messy feelings, I appeared before Julian again. I sat down at the dining table. He didn't even look up, just set his newspaper aside and continued eating. I couldn't stand his calm and collected demeanor. I sat there, stirring the soft cooked porridge with my spoon, and asked sullenly, "Ms. Vance is your fiancée. Weren't you angry about what happened last time?" Julian slowly wiped his mouth with a napkin. "We each do our own thing. Why should I be angry? Otherwise, do you think she'd let me keep you around?" I tried to sound casual. "Well, if Ms. Vance can sleep with other people, why don't you give it a try?" He raised an eyebrow at that, then got up and walked over to me. His thumb traced the skin around my gland. His eyes were cold, but his words sent a shiver down my spine. It was almost like he was flirting. "Try? Try with who? You? I don't have a thing for men." He paused, his lips almost touching my burning red earlobe. "Leo, baby, I'm into beautiful women, you know?" I tilted my head away from his warm breath, my fingers twisting the hem of my shirt as a bitter jealousy churned inside me. His fingers moved, turning down the setting on my collar. I whipped my head around in shock, but he cupped my face, and the chaotic rush of pheromones made me dizzy. He leaned in and sniffed my neck with an intrigued expression. Almost healed. I didn't understand what he meant, and he wasn't in the mood to explain. All I could do was watch his retreating figure, like I was drinking poison to quench my thirst. "Into beautiful women?" I repeated the words, my expression darkening. In mid-May, Julian's fiancée threw a party on a multimillion-dollar yacht, inviting all of New York's elite. Julian casually placed the invitation in my palm and tilted his chin, indicating I should go with him the next day. I clutched the gold-trimmed edge of the invitation, pressed my lips together, and shook my head. "I haven't been feeling well lately, so I'll skip it. You have fun, Julian." He paused, studying my face, but ultimately didn't push it. He just said, "If you're not feeling well, call the family doctor later. And remember to send me the report after your checkup." I nodded obediently. I put the invitation on the coffee table, turned my back to him, and headed upstairs with a slight smile. Back in my room, the women's clothes and wig I'd secretly bought a few days ago were all laid out on my bed. I picked up an exquisitely made dress and held it up to myself in the full-length mirror. A sudden knock on the door made me jump. I frantically shoved the dress under the covers. Julian, his patience gone, opened the door. He glanced meaningfully at the foot of my bed. "If you change your mind and decide to go, remember to wear a suppressant patch. There will be a lot of alphas there." I calmly put on a harmless smile and nodded. From his expression, I suspected he knew everything but just wasn't saying it. Could he be indulging me? The thought popped into my head but was dismissed just as quickly. He had told me himself he wasn't interested in men. But a quick search online told me what they say: The biggest homophobes are the deepest in the closet. I shrugged at my reflection in the mirror. Taking down Julian Price was going to be a piece of cake. On the yacht, couples drank and chatted. I stood alone on the deck, letting the wind blow through my hair, my eyes fixed on where Julian was standing. He was leaning in, talking smoothly with someone next to him. When he casually looked up, his eyes met mine. His gaze darkened, and he started walking toward me. I got nervous and quickly looked away, starting to walk in the opposite direction, but I tripped on my long dress and fell forward. So much for a grand entrance. But the next second, strong arms caught me and pulled me into a steady embrace. Julian draped his suit jacket over me, covering the large expanse of bare skin on my back. He pulled the jacket tighter around me and leaned in close, studying my face like an object of affection. And who is this pretty lady? Whenever Julian spoke to me like that, in that certain tone, it always had a strange effect on me, drawing all my attention to him. I was afraid I'd give myself away if I spoke, so I just shook my head demurely, playing the part of the innocent little thing he liked. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, like lovers sharing a secret. "Leo, baby, you look beautiful in a dress. But it's windy tonight, so keep your jacket on." I instinctively tried to back away, but he hooked an arm around my waist and pulled me back. I felt the sudden cool touch of a necklace on my neck. He had just put it on me. All I could do was stare at him, my eyes wide with shock, my heart in my throat. He pressed his cheek against mine. "Keep your suppressant patch on and don't wander off. I'll take you home after I'm done with my business." With that, he stood up straight and patted my shoulder. My mind was a chaotic mess, replaying his words as my face grew hotter and hotter. Did I actually get to him? The wind on the yacht was strong. I sat at the bar, wrapped in Julian's jacket, as people passing by occasionally glanced my way. I didn't care. I tossed my wig, feeling smug. I'd accomplished my goal for the night. It really was all about knowing what he liked. Trying to fight him head-on before was just asking for trouble. After a glass of fruit wine, the excitement in my head grew even more intense. It suddenly occurred to me that kissing in this slightly tipsy state wouldn't be a bad idea at all. With that thought, I shakily got up to find Julian. He seemed to have just closed a deal, a smile still on his face. When he saw me, he even waved me over, like calling a puppy. If it were anyone else, I'd have been annoyed and refused to go. But with Julian, it felt like I was born to submit. "Julian, are you done?" I asked, my eyes shining as I looked at him. Julian patted my head. "Almost. Did you have a drink?" I suddenly remembered he didn't like me drinking, but I'd already messed up. Might as well go all in. I threw my arms around his neck and pressed my lips against his. "Did I drink or not? Why don't you check for yourself and find out?" Julian didn't move, just let me clumsily lick and kiss his lips while his hand gently caressed my wrist. Then he suddenly pulled me away with force. He tried to shield me, but it was too fast. His fiancée, Vanessa, stormed over and slapped me across the face. The sharp crack echoed as my head snapped to the side, my ear burning. She threw her handbag at me. Where did this little vixen come from? Trying to seduce my man. My suppressant patch had slipped off, and a bit of my pheromones leaked out. Vanessa's brow furrowed in disgust. "So it's that low-grade Omega. Julian took you in all these years just so you could repay him like this? Shameless. I feel dirty just for hitting you." I was completely stunned by the assault. Julian reached out to stop her, then glanced at the head of the Vance family standing not far away. He turned back to me abruptly, pressed on my gland, and warned, "Get rid of those pathetic ideas." His business ties with the Vance family ran deep. I rationally analyzed the situation, pressed my lips together, and took a step back. But Vanessa wouldn't let it go. "Julian, why are you still keeping someone like this around? We may not be married yet, but I don't feel safe with him here. If he can pull something like this today, who knows, maybe he'll be climbing into your bed next." Julian gave her a long, deep look, then spoke like a devoted partner making a decision for her. "Then we'll do as you say. We'll kick him out." In that instant, my heart plummeted, and my brain seemed to shut down. I couldn't understand what Julian was saying, My lips parted. I begged for him to spare me a glance, to take back his words. Julian, no. Julian's eyes flickered for a moment. His lips curled into a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Is Ms. Vance satisfied now? He had Al take me to a room on the yacht. On the way, I felt countless stares piercing me like daggers. But I was already numb. I sat in silence in the room. Outside the door, Al and a few of his men stood guard. I didn't know how long Julian planned to keep me locked up. Maybe as soon as the party was over, I'd be a pawn he'd discarded. Thinking about how confident I had been about winning him over just made me feel pathetic. I sat in the dark, stuffy room all night and through to the next afternoon. No one brought me any food. They just let me starve. It was as if Julian had completely forgotten about me. But I still clung to a sliver of hope. Maybe Vanessa had given him a direct order, and he had no choice. No choice? But I had a choice. A last, desperate gamble. At 2:30 a.m., the entire yacht was plunged into a dead silence. My stomach, which had been aching from hunger, finally felt a little better after the warm porridge Al had secretly brought me in the evening. I told him I'd thought things through and that he could report back to Julian. Now the guards at my door were all gone. I pushed the door open and walked out onto the dark deck. I couldn't see the path ahead. Suddenly, my foot slipped, and I fell face first. My nose hit the metal plating, and when I touched it, my hand came away covered in blood. Afraid of waking anyone, I scrambled up and crept to the railing. For a moment, I hesitated, watching the rolling waves of the sea. I'm actually a coward who's afraid of death. Before Julian took me in, I was always bullied by those low-life alphas. I scraped by, barely hanging on, and only when I met Julian could I finally breathe. Even though he only picked me up because of a lab report showing a 98% pheromone match. My hands on the railing started to tremble. I looked back, but I couldn't see the path I came from or the way back. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the yacht, coming from the direction of the room I had just escaped. My eyes widened in a daze. The moment I heard the sound of my door being opened, I decisively jumped off the yacht. In the haze, I thought I heard Julian calling my name. His voice, sliced into fragments by the seawater, couldn't reach my ears. Because I'm afraid of pain. It's just that everyone thought I was used to it. Good news, I didn't die. Bad news, my gland is fully healed. Squatting next to me at the construction site, Eli told me it was a blessing in disguise. Now, no one would ever remember I was a low-grade omega. I pulled my hard hat down over my forehead and joked, who says being a low-grade omega is just about a faulty gland? Maybe I'm just a low-grade person. Don't say that. Why are you always putting yourself down? Your work ethic is one of a kind around here. Eli is my mentor and a beta, but he's also my savior. He pulled me out of the water, saved my life, and helped me find a job to start over. That night, as we lay in bed chatting, Eli started reminiscing about rescuing me again. He suddenly said, back then you really looked like someone who was heartbroken. I choked. Was it that obvious? Thankfully, he didn't bring up my bizarre outfit at the time. Using the classic I have a friend opener, I told him my story with Julian. He was blunt. Sounds like you were fooled by the suspension bridge effect. I argued my friend really thought Julian had feelings for him too. Why else would he be so good to him and kiss him? Eli said, I don't know if I should say this or not. Before I could even nod for him to go on, he just said it. You sound like Julian's lapdog. He gives you one little treat, and you come wagging your tail for more. I was speechless and turned my head away. I couldn't believe he called me out so directly. He was right, though. It was a painful truth, a real wake-up call. Growing up, not many people were good to me. Julian was one and you're another. But Julian was in the past now. He took me in, so I became his tool to repay the debt. When I crossed the line, I disappeared, just as he wished. I shouldn't have held onto any hope for him. You can't jump into the same fire pit twice. I drifted off into a restless sleep and had a bizarre dream. When I woke up, Eli had texted me, telling me to get to work a little early this afternoon. It was hot on the site, so I grabbed 2 bottles of ice water from the fridge to bring to Eli. But I don't know if it was because I dreamed about Julian crying last night, which must have embarrassed him, but I ran into some seriously bad luck today. 6 months after faking my death, after Julian had turned NYC upside down, he was standing in the stairwell of my apartment building, blocking my way. I tried to walk around him without making eye contact, but he stood there like a wooden statue, blocking my path. We were so close our breaths mingled, the exact distance I used to dream of. "Excuse me, sir," I said, taking a few steps back and asking him to move. He opened his palm, revealing a necklace. It was the one he put on me on the yacht. "Your necklace." He held it up, and the pendant dangled in front of my eyes. I didn't get what he was doing. I pressed my lips together and told him the truth. "I pawned it for cash a long time ago." His eyes darkened. He stepped toward me, and I instinctively backed away, avoiding his scent. "Move," I said, my voice sharp with rejection. He froze. "Come back with me." I shook my head, clutching my precious bottles of ice water, and slammed my shoulder into his. While he was still stunned, I took off down the stairs. But I didn't expect him to have people waiting at the bottom. Furious, I looked back up. He descended the stairs one by one. A 98% match. "You really think you can get away?" I didn't understand. "You were the one who wanted to kick me out. Why are you trying to bring me back now?" Julian stepped onto the last stair and beckoned to me with that same old gesture. "Come home with me." That was him. He never explained anything, just gave orders from on high. I glanced at him, pretending to relent, then hurled both bottles of water straight at him and turned to run. But in the next second, an overwhelming, dominant alpha pheromone enveloped me, making my legs go weak and my mind turn to mush. I fought to stay conscious, grinding my teeth. "Julian, we were done a long time ago. As for my mistakes, just consider them canceled out by all the good I did for you before." Julian wrapped his arm around my waist, pulling me into his arms. The cool necklace touched my gland, and I shivered, yanking it off and throwing it on the ground. "I don't want any of your things. Didn't you hear me? I said I'm not going back with you." He said calmly, "You're about to go into heat." That was ridiculous. If I was going into heat, couldn't I just take a suppressant myself? I told him to let go, even trying to disgust him with my old, fawning act. But his hands on me didn't budge, tolerating all my unreasonable behavior. I was just too tired. I let Julian carry me to the car, but the thought of my ice water still bothered me. I suddenly blurted out, "Julian, if you go pick up my water, I'll go back with you." I said it on a whim. I knew a pampered man like him would never do it himself, he'd just order a subordinate to do it. But he nodded and said, "Okay." I watched with my own eyes as he bent down, picked up the water bottles from the ground, wiped them with his expensive handkerchief and handed them to me. Caught between protecting the environment and throwing them at him again, I chose the former. With my back to him, I racked my brain. Finally, I came up with a great idea and said sincerely, "Are you afraid my existence is a threat to you? I can have my gland surgically removed." He turned me around, his face a mask of disbelief, his usual composure finally cracking. "Leo, do you have any idea what you're saying?" Of course I knew what I was saying. It was just removing a gland. It would hurt like hell, but at least it would be better than being with him. If you're not happy with that, I could always just jump into the sea again. I definitely wouldn't survive this time, and then you and Ms. Vance wouldn't have to worry anymore. He didn't let me finish, covering my lips with his hand. He just stared at me, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Just stay alive. Please just stay alive." He repeated it like a prayer, begging me to live, and it made my heart ache. I pushed him away and pretended to sleep. And then I actually fell asleep. When I woke up, I was lying on a familiar bed, the same one I'd pretended to be drunk on. But the room and the villa were not the ones I'd stayed in before. How long do I have to stay here? Just until my heat is over, or to help you through your rut? I knew my place. The only reason Julian brought me back was to use our 98% pheromone match to get through his rut peacefully. When Julian didn't answer, I pressed him. He rubbed his temples and finally sighed, pointing to the lavish meal on the table and telling me to eat. After the first bite, I put down my fork and knife and looked at him. He glanced up, surprised. I said bluntly, "I want you to cook for me." He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. He just got up and went to the kitchen. Watching his figure in an apron, busy in the kitchen, I zoned out, wondering when he'd learn to do that. The food he brought to the table looked amazing, and it was all my favorites. But I only took one bite before telling him, "Julian, your cooking is terrible." I said it with such sincere innocence. Julian's brow twitched, his dark eyes hiding an emotion I couldn't read. He picked me up and carried me toward the bedroom. "Then I'll just have to make you something else to eat." I clawed at his back like a feral cat. I couldn't believe he could be even more shameless than me. "Julian, I swear, if you dare do anything to me today, I'll jump from right there." He caught the finger I was pointing at the large glass window and brought it to his lips for a kiss. I stared at him in horror as he suddenly fell with me onto the bed. He flipped me over, planting his hands on either side of my head. His tone was light. "Do you really think I'd let you jump? But even if you did, it's fine. I just have to follow you in death." He paused, his long, elegant fingers lifting the hem of my shirt, his palm pressing against my lower stomach. "Baby, let's have a little baby that looks just like you." I thought Julian had lost his mind. He was never like this. He was always so rational and terrifyingly calm. Panicked, I slapped him across the face, with all the force Vanessa had used on me. "Julian, calm down. If you want a baby, you can find an Omega." He gently took the hand I hit him with and placed it on his other cheek. "Feel better? If not, keep going. It'll be my turn soon." When a thug meets an even bigger thug, he is truly helpless. I tried to play the victim to bring him to his senses. "Julian, we used to be such good friends. Back then, I must have been out of my mind to act that way toward you. But I'm clear-headed now, and I promise I'll never like you again." He frowned, gripping my hands tightly, and his voice was strained when he spoke. "You don't like me anymore? You're clear-headed?" I nodded frantically, wishing I could scream in his ear that I really had no feelings for him anymore. I would never again be the Leo whose eyes were filled only with him, who did stupid things for him. Now, when I think about all that thoughtless stuff I did, I just want to bang my head against a wall. I shouldn't have pretended to be drunk on your bed, or eavesdropped on you, or worn a dress and kissed you on the yacht. Stop talking. I said stop talking. Leo, I'm begging you. Please stop. Julian pressed his forehead against mine, a red mark blooming on the cheek I slapped. If I have anyone to thank, it's Ms. Vance for that slap that woke me up, and I have you to thank for locking me in that room and letting me starve. That's what made me finally see the light. A single, bitter, hot tear suddenly fell on my lips. I blinked, puzzled. Even a man as cold and heartless as him had warm tears. Julian sealed my confession with a kiss, gently stroking my hair to calm my trembling body. "I'm sorry. I didn't protect you. I'm sorry. I never meant for you to starve. I sent someone with food, but they told me you wouldn't eat." I pushed Julian away and rolled over, wrapping myself in the blanket like a cocoon. I wasn't refusing to eat. I was starving. "No, wait, I'm really tired now. You should go. I want to sleep." My words were a jumbled mess, but I really did want to sleep. I refused to let Julian lie next to me. He didn't say anything, just sat quietly on the small sofa across from me, watching over me. In the middle of the night, I got up to use the bathroom as usual, forgetting I was in a new place and started walking out of habit. Suddenly, a hoarse voice broke the darkness. "Are you leaving again?" I mumbled, "Yeah." Just as my hand was about to close around the doorknob, the voice spoke again. "What will it take to make you stay?" I was about to burst. "What the hell do you want?" The dark figure that had been sitting motionlessly suddenly moved toward me. I jumped, grabbing a vase from the table and hitting him square with it. "I'm not afraid of you." The figure grunted but didn't stop approaching. I had never seen such a persistent. I froze. He gently wrapped his arms around me, pressing his face into my neck. Wet drops trickled down my skin. I was so close. Your gland was almost healed. We were so close to being together. I was never going to kick you out. Ever. I just had to say that in front of the Vance family. My nose twitched. A metallic scent of rust filled the air. As if waking from a dream, I fumbled for the light switch. The sight of Julian, his face a mess, holding me, gave me a shock. You're bleeding. Don't you dare pass out on me. I'll call a doctor. I struggled to get Julian onto the sofa, then turned to find my phone. Julian grabbed my wrist, pulling me back and stopping me from leaving. Do you have a death wish? Why do you do this to yourself? We were over, and frankly, I was doing better without you. He was making my head throb. The veins on the wrist he was gripping stood out from the force. I tried to calm down and negotiate. How about this? I'll help you through your rut. Temporary mark, permanent mark, whatever you want. Basically, I'll let you have your fun. Deal? Julian seemed moved for a second, but his grip on me didn't loosen at all. And then what? Then you'll ask me to let you go, right? You'll go get the mark scrubbed, you'll go get your gland removed, won't you? Everything he listed sounded incredibly painful. It made me hesitate, but to spite him, to annoy him enough to let me go, I pretended he hit the nail on the head and nodded. I won't let my pheromones be a threat to you. Julian looked at me, his expression unreadable, as if that one look confirmed something for him. Ignoring the wound on his forehead, he threw me over his shoulder. The sudden feeling of being airborne made me dizzy. I instinctively pounded on his back with my fists, but I eased up when I heard him grunt in pain. I landed on the soft bedding, and he pressed down on top of me. I turned my head away defiantly, avoiding his burning gaze. Just mark me. The words had barely left my mouth when he grabbed my chin and forced my head back. He wouldn't let me look away, wouldn't let my hands claw at the sheets. Fragmented light from the overhead lamp fell into my half-closed eyes. A sharp pain shot through my gland, and tears streamed from my eyes, only to be caught by soft lips. The large room filled with the scent of sandalwood ash smoldering quietly on a snowy night. Gradually, my own scent of chilled liquor began to bloom. Julian's lips parted, his voice hoarse. Baby, do you remember this bed? That time you were drunk, lying here in my bed. Do you remember what you said? My brain felt like it was stuffed with cotton. My memories were scattered and broken. One moment, I was trying to follow his words, the next, I was thinking about what happened on the yacht. Finally, I managed to choke out a single phrase. Julian, don't say it. As soon as I said it, time seemed to freeze. I opened my eyes and met Julian's hesitant expression. We were both inevitably thinking about the hurtful things he said. I sat up, using all my strength to get my weak legs to work, and started to walk away. Julian struggled to suppress all his possessiveness and desire and asked calmly, "Where are you going, dressed like that?" I licked my lips, embarrassed and awkward. After a 3-second struggle, I told the truth. To the bathroom. I got up because I had to pee. Nothing's more awkward than a sudden silence, especially when the air is crackling with tension. Julian didn't know what to do with me. He sighed. There's a bathroom in here, you know. When a person gets embarrassed, they start fidgeting. I touched my newly, temporarily marked gland and limped into the bathroom Julian had pointed out. When I came back out, he had already bandaged his wound himself, and the room was filled with nutrition packs. I didn't understand, but the next 7 days would be something I'd never forget for the rest of my life. It was just Julian and me in the villa. While he was still sound asleep, I grabbed my phone, which I found and hidden under the bed, and ran out. The path was clear. He hadn't set up any obstacles. Maybe he was keeping a promise, though I didn't know if he'd ever actually agreed to one. I ran back to my rental. As soon as I opened the door, I saw Eli sitting in the living room, legs crossed, watching TV. He looked thrilled to see me back. But when he saw the marks on my neck, he froze. Didn't you message me saying you had a family emergency you had to go take care of? What happened to you? Betas can't smell pheromones, so I confidently spun a lie. I was helping out with some construction back home. Fell down and got pretty scraped up. Eli believed me and nodded. I turned away, let out a soft sigh of relief, and went to my room to take a shower, planning to catch up on some serious sleep. But as soon as I lay down, I got a message from Julian. "It's just a temporary mark. You don't need to get it scrubbed. And another thing, we are not over. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath to calm myself, then shut off my phone and put it aside, trying to will myself to sleep. It will be over, I thought. He and Vanessa will definitely end up together. When the project wrapped up, Eli and I went out to eat with the foreman. On the way, we passed a high-end restaurant and saw two people I shouldn't have seen. Julian and Vanessa. I was just about to lower my head and walk away when a loud argument between them caught my attention. Vanessa angrily threw a folder in Julian's face. I was shocked by her action, but Julian just smirked nonchalantly and wiped a bead of blood from a scratch on his cheek. He saw me. He moved his lips, and I frowned in confusion. From this distance, I couldn't hear a word he was saying. Eli saw me staring, thinking I was envious of the rich people eating inside, and quickly pulled me along. The look in Julian's eyes changed, becoming cold, like a snake flicking its tongue. I quickly pushed Eli's hand away and whispered urgently, "Let's go. Let's go." I'd finally gotten a break from Julian's constant pursuit, a chance to breathe freely. If I got caught in his sights again now, I didn't know what the consequences would be. A week later, Eli took me to a new job. On the site, I heard a few guys talking, saying this building was going to be abandoned because the Vance family was having financial problems. Eli shook his head and sighed heavily. I just wonder if the Vances will be able to pay us for our work. At first, it was just a few people talking, but then the New York media started reporting on it extensively, as if someone was pulling strings behind the scenes. I scrolled through my phone, checking my savings over and over. Without this paycheck, I wasn't sure if I could afford the surgery, though I wouldn't do it unless it was a last resort. Eli patted my shoulder, looking puzzled. "The project manager wants to see you talk about something. A young lady from the Vance family. Do you two know each other? Oh, right, when you go, remember to ask about our pay." I was confused too. Why did she want to see me? Unable to figure it out, I had no choice but to go. Eli tossed me his car keys, telling me to drive there that night and to be careful of the rain making the road slick. I tossed the keys in my hand and assured him, "You know my driving skills." Eli punched my arm playfully, telling me to be careful. I gave him an okay sign and drove to the meeting. That night, the rain got heavier. I drove carefully, glancing in the rearview mirror. A car was following me at a steady pace. The window rolled down a bit, revealing Julian's face inside. I froze for a second, then looked away, focusing on the road. I noticed in my peripheral vision that his car sped past me and gradually disappeared from view. But then another car started following me. Unlike Julian's, this one was going incredibly fast, like it was trying to tailgate me, but it was more than that. Felt like it was coming for me. A harsh white light shone from behind. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, the whistling wind roaring in my ears. Then, a loud bang like hitting a tree trunk. In my daze, I heard Julian screaming, his voice raw and filled with grief, one agonizing cry after another. There was a heavy sob in his voice, as if I were dead. "Wait, I'm not dead yet, am I?" I frantically touched my face, my neck, my body. As I moved, I caught a glimpse of Julian punching out a car window with his bare fists. He was kneeling on the ground, his perfectly tailored suit soaked through by the heavy rain, his pants covered in mud. He looked nothing like the high and mighty tycoon of New York. A bitter taste filled my mouth. I didn't know if it was tears or rain sliding down my chin. "Julian, I'm not dead. I'm tough to kill," I rasped, my voice too hoarse to form a proper sentence. Julian, lost in his grief, couldn't hear anything. He was muttering what he'd said before about me staying alive, but the next second it turned into him wanting to die with me. "Julian, I'm not dead. I'm really not dead." I limped toward him and grabbed his hand, which was covered in glass shards. "I'm still alive. I'm tough to kill. I survived jumping into the sea, and I can survive a car crash too." He was afraid of getting his blood on me, so he used his lips, cold and wet with rain, to stop my unlucky words. "Leo, I can't lose you again. Let all the bad karma fall on me. Let it all come for me." He stayed kneeling on the ground. Looking at him, I could somehow tell the difference between the tears and the rain on his face. Then, Let me ask you, when you kissed me, was it because you like me? I asked, enunciating each word. Leo, I like you. I've liked you since I first saw you at 18. It's not just because of our high pheromone match, it's that fire in you. You're the most special Omega I've ever met. If he hadn't mentioned it, I would have almost forgotten what my life was like before I was 18. Lying on the ground with my clothes in tatters, especially in winter, my hands and feet numb from the cold, often starving, getting beaten up from time to time, I was no different from a stray dog on the street that could be kicked at any moment. Thinking of that, I remembered Julian's kindness, and then I remembered his cruelty. You say you like me, so how are you going to prove it? Besides, you told me before that you like beautiful women. I couldn't bring myself to choose Julian again with unwavering certainty, but I couldn't deny one thing. I was wavering. It seems people who are starved for love really are easily won over by the smallest scrap of affection. I went with Julian to the hospital. He had his hands bandaged while I was pushed around for various checkups. When Eli found out, he rushed over and stood guard by my hospital bed. He finally met the Julian from my stories. I thought the Julian you were talking about just had the same name as the tycoon. I didn't realize he was actually the same person. I didn't know how to explain, so I just mumbled a few vague agreements. Julian said they found the driver who caused the crash. It was Vanessa and that look-alike of his working together. He had already called the police, and they would be taking over the investigation. I thought for a moment and asked, the Vance family's financial problems, was that your doing? Julian pulled up a chair and sat down. The Vance family was all style and no substance, rotten from the inside out. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sought me out for a marriage alliance and a business partnership. He paused, his voice filled with guilt and regret. I just never thought you would get dragged into this. I'm sorry. It was rare to hear him apologize. I picked at the bedsheet. Yeah, well, I didn't know what to say. This new dynamic between us just felt so awkward. After you're discharged, come with me somewhere. I didn't ask where, and he didn't tell me. We shared a knowing look, then quickly looked away. The salty sea breeze blew straight into my face. Julian stood on the deck of the yacht, his sharp, cold eyes looking at me with deep affection. Today was different. He walked toward me step by step, and I couldn't help but clench my hands at my sides. He seemed to read my every emotion and gave me a small smile. Leo, smile for me. Okay? I deliberately looked away, playing with him just like he used to play with me, teasing his expectant gaze. Julian, who are you to me? Why should I listen to you? Why should I smile for you? He pressed his lips together in silence and handed me a glass of my favorite fruit wine. Then I'll wait until the day I have the right. I beckoned him over, mimicking the gesture he used to use on me. He didn't hesitate, but walked over to my side, surprised. What is it? I took a sip of the wine, savored the taste, and said seriously, you used to forbid me from drinking, and now you're offering me a drink yourself. This time, want to check again? May I? He asked, stepping forward with the air of a gentleman. I took a step back. Of course. But it's now or never. The sea breeze suddenly died down, and even the rolling waves seemed to freeze, like a movie frame had paused. He suddenly pulled me into his arms and said earnestly, "You're the only one I've ever liked. I was so busy scheming and playing games before that I hurt you. But from now on, I will cherish you.